Welcome everyone. I hope you all can hear me. Uh, I am Ansh from GDSC, the current app development lead, and today we all are here for Flutter Festival 2023. And I hope we'll have a good learning experience together. And I thank you all for coming. And yeah, let's do this. So, first of all, I hope all of you have installed Flutter in your systems. If you haven't, the if you haven't installed it, then it's still okay. You can just watch the video, watch the stream, and then later on you can install and do it from there. So it doesn't matter really. So what I'll do now is start with the basics, tell you how to load a project, make a default app, how to run it, where to run it, what is a widget, we'll make a simple counter app later on, and then I'll explain you all the different important features that we actually require in Flutter. So when you load up Android Studio, which will be the editor that we'll use because it works really well with Flutter, you'll see this pop-up screen come over here. We have a projects, customize plugins, and learn Android Studio button over here. So in projects, let's create a brand new project. So let's go to new Flutter project. This is your SDK path of Flutter, which you don't need to worry about if you have done all the installation properly. I'll go to next. And over here, it says a new Flutter project. Android, iOS, and just name the project. Let's say it's Flutter underscore session, and let's click finish. And okay, yeah. So this will load a brand new Flutter project for me. And this is basically your Android Studio workspace. You have all your folders and files over here, the name of the app, you have your main file over here. This is basically a default code that you get with any Flutter app that you load. So first of all, let's learn how do we run an app so that we know where to run an app. Basically, we use something called as an emulator, which is nothing but emulating a physical device onto your laptop. So it's very easy to create a emulator. I've already created one, but I'll create a new one and show you all. So I go to device manager button over here on the right side of the toolbar. I go to create device and let's select Pixel 4 XL. I go to next, and this is the latest Android that you have available right now. So I go to next, and let's give it some new name, and I'll just increase storage of it so we can test our app. And that is pretty much it. So we have a new emulator over here. This is the name. You can click on the run button and it will load your emulator. It will take some time. By time I'll just remove the useless code from here that we don't need. All the commented part. So as you can see, our emulator has loaded, and let's run what this code says. Let's see what it says. It says installing build, and there we go. So this is the default app that you'll get whenever you load any new Flutter project. It's basically Flutter telling you that here you go, you have a default code to work with, and it's a simple counter app. So it's basically showing 0. If I click 1, it will go to 1. Click again, it will go to 2. That's it. We'll try to make this app from scratch over here so that you guys know what are the different widgets and all. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll comment all of this code because it just looks like a very long line of I can use command plus slash if it's on Mac or control plus slash if it's on Windows for a shortcut. So the first line will be an import function. We'll be importing the basic flutter material.dart package, and it has a main function. And what does this main function say? It says run app. So it is running it's a function basically. It's running an app, and the name of that app is my app, like the function name. So let's simply write it like class. It's a class. So it's in C or C++, you have something called as functions, and similarly in Java, you have something called as class. So it's kind of C, C++, and Java. Flutter is based on these three languages basically. So let's just write class my app. This is basically the basic format that all of you have to do. And so this is a stateless widget. So what is a stateless widget now? So in Flutter, we have two kinds of widget, a stateless widget and a stateful widget. I'll come to stateful widget later on. So stateless widget is basically anything that is static, which won't change when you interact with this app. Suppose I click on this button, this app bar ka text doesn't change. That means it's a stateless widget, but the text over here, like 3, 4, 5, it'll change, right? So it's wrapped under stateful widget. So yeah, so we'll extend a stateless widget over here because we don't need a dynamic app right now. And whenever you create a stateless widget or a stateful widget, you will get this red color bulb. So you click on it and you write create one missing override. So this is by default you have to do in any scenario. And now I'll return something. And what I'll return is something called as a scaffold. And I'll, yeah. So scaffold is basically any the main widget. So it has properties like you can see over here. If I'll hover on it, it'll have a properties like app bar. It'll have a body. It'll have many other widgets, sub widgets inside it. So let's first load our app and let's see what it shows right now. And it gives me an error. Yeah. Okay. So let's just go ahead and then we'll see. I'll let's say app bar. So it has the app bar property over here, which I'll give. So inside app bar, I can give a let's say title. It has a title property, and a title property will take a text widget, and so I'll call the text widget over here. I'll write let's say Flutter demo, and why is it giving me an error? Hmm, 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 hmm. Okay, yeah. So I have made a small mistake. We have to wrap the scaffold in something called as material app. So basically, the first widget that your app will load is the one of the most important widgets of Flutter. It's called as material app, and this material app will have something called as like some properties like title. It'll have theme. It'll have a home property. So home property will take the basic any the first page that you want to load, right? So let's say I want to create a page which is called as home page. So I'll just make a new function and home page, and now it will say obviously it's not defined. So I'll go over here and I'll create a new class. Again, we'll just create it as a stateless widget and extends stateless. Okay. And now again, same thing you have to do. Hover on it, and you'll find this red bulb. Create an override, and now we are good to go and add our scaffold. So I'll write return scaffold, and now if I load my app, it shows a white screen because we haven't done anything. So I'll just say again what we have done so far. We have a main function. I have a run app command. It is running a class called as my app, which is a stateless widget. It returns a widget called as material app. It has a property home, which is basically meaning that the very first page of your app that is loaded whenever you run the app, and you have your home page that is also a stateless widget, and you have a scaffold over here. So scaffold has many properties like a floating action button, a drawer, a bottom sheet. Like in app, you have a function which has a bottom sheet, and you have an app bar. So I'll create an app bar over here. I'll write title as inside a text widget, and that text widget is, let's say, Flutter demo, and you have a app bar over here. So the default theme of Flutter is blue and white, so that's why you can see all this color as blue. We can change the color, and yeah, it's not a big deal. Now, another property that scaffold has is called as a body. So body is basically everything on your screen essentially, right? So what do we want on a screen for this app? We want it to display a text, let's say, for example. So I'll write text widget, and inside I'll write, let's say, hello. And you can see very small left top over here, hello, if you can see, I don't know if you can see, yeah, I think you can see now. And if you want to increase the size, text widget basically has a property called as style. So, and it needs a widget called as text style. Uh, so text style widget, and what will it take? It will take color. It will take color as, let's say, colors dot red. You can give it a font size. So let's say 20. And now if I save, so it has increased my size, and you can see it a bit. And what else? So let's say if you want to put the text in the center of the body, right? So it's very simple. It's basically English. So I'll just go over here, text. I'll right click. I'll go to show context actions, and I'll just wrap with center. Center is a widget that basically has a child property, and that child property can be any other widget. So this statement essentially means body has a center widget. So the center of the body will have a text widget. So now if I save it, it says hello in the center of the body, which is completely what we wanted to do. And but what we want to do is make a counter app, right? So I'll just make this text as, let's say, 5 for now, and displays 5. And we need a button, an add button to basically increment the counter, correct? So there's another property of scaffold, which is a very useful property again. It's called as a floating action button property. So what is a floating action button? Floating action button is just a small circle kind of thing that you can see in many apps these days, I think. So it will take a floating action button widget, and it has various properties. One of the compulsory ones is a on press property. We'll just put it null right now. And if I save my app, you will all see a small circle kind of thing in the end over here. That's a floating action button, right? And what do we need inside a floating action button? We need a plus sign because it's an incrementing counter app. So floating action button widget, like any other widget, will take a child parameter, like the center took a child parameter. So I'll write in its child property, I'll call another widget. Everything is widget in Flutter. So I'll call another widget which is icon. And we have some preloaded icons in Flutter. So you write the command icons dot, and then whatever command icon that you need. So we have add ABC, access alarm outlines. I think it's an alarm clock. Yeah. So if I let's write this. If I load, you all will see an alarm clock over here. So it's that simple to make a proper button in Flutter. Just like two lines and you get it. But what we need over here is an add icon. So you can see a plus sign over there. Now, if I click on this button, nothing happens because the on press property of this floating action button is set to null. So what we'll do is we'll create a variable. Let's call it as, it's an integer. Let's call it as count and let's initialize it to 0. Now we need to increment this count variable every time we click on this button, right? Because whenever you click on this button, well, then you should increment your counter variable. So instead of this null, I will basically write count plus plus. Or if you guys don't know this shortcut, then you just write count equal to count plus 1. Both of them will do the same thing. So let's comment the second one right now. And if I click add, nothing happens obviously because this text is a static text. It it is not linked to the count variable, right? So it will just show fire. So how do we put the variable over there? We put a dollar sign and then you write the name of the variable. So this has taken count's value right now. So now when I refresh it, you'll see a 0 over there. Why? Because we had initialized count to 0. And now if I change this count to 2, if I save it, you'll see a 2 over there. Because it's taking the count value. So it's linked to the count variable. But again, same problem. If I click on add, nothing happens. Let's first check if this add function is actually working or not. So in the onPress property of our very beautiful floating action button, I will print count. So where will this print count go? It will go in our console over here. So it basically shows the output of the print statements and all the necessary information that you need. So now if I click on add, you can see the output is 3. It was 2. I incremented it, so it became 3. If I add it once more, it will show me 4. So that means our button is working. But why is this count not updating? Is the print statement shows that it's 4, but the screen shows that it's 2. So that does not make sense. Now coming back to what I told earlier, this is a stateless widget. So it doesn't change when you interact with your app. So what we need here, we need a stateful widget to make the widget interactive as to whatever we do with the app, right? Again, we have to change a lot of code. So let's make this a stateful widget first of all. So let's create a new class. Let's write homepage extends stateful widget and create a missing override as usual. Let's name this as, this is basically a proper format of writing stateful widgets, so it's pretty common. And create state, and it will take a return statement, so it will call another function, and let's call that function as home page state. And yeah, now we need a home page state class. So class home page state extends. What does it extend? It should extend the state of our home page class. So this home page is extending a stateful widget, and this home page state is extending that home page state. If that didn't make sense, it will make sense now. So state, and I write home page. So again, same story, we create a override, and this is how we create a stateful widget. So these all are like lines that you have to always write. So our home page is now a stateful widget. So we can write a return statement here. And let's do one thing, let's just copy our code from the stateless widget part that we wrote over here. So from return statement to scaffold, I'll copy, I'll paste over here. I'll comment this whole code because we don't need it to be a stateless widget. And it gives me an error. It says count is not defined, obviously, because we haven't defined our count. So count equal to 0. Now it's a stateful widget, so it should update, right? But if I click on add, it still doesn't update. Why is that? So this home page is a stateful widget right now, but it should know when to update its state, right? So there's a function called as set state that we pass inside the stateful widget for it to know when to update itself, right? So inside, where do we want the state to change? We want the state to change whenever we increment our count variable. So inside the onPressed, I write my set state, and I'll just move these two statements from here inside the set state command. I'll save it, and now if I add, you can see our number incrementing very nicely. So this is a stateful widget, and we have used the set state command. So it incremented our counter 1, 2, 3, 14. And one more thing that I wanted to tell you all is there are two buttons over here. So whenever I click Control S or Command S, it just does hot reload. So this button is called as a hot reload button that basically just reloads the app for you. The next button is a hot restart button. So that will restart the whole app. Basically, it will call the material app function, material app widget again. So if I click on this, you'll see the display text became 0. Because what it did, it called the main function again, it called the material app widget again, and then it came here and saw it count as 0. But if I keep on incrementing this 3, 4, 5, and I click on hot reload, it will not change that count value because it is just building it again. This particular page, it is not changing the count variable, but basically it's not loading the app again. So this is the difference between the hot restart and hot reload. It's a very common thing in Flutter, so, and a very useful thing. And this is our counter app done basically. So if you have any questions, then please let me know. After this short questions break, we will do a very important part of Flutter, which is container, column, and row. It's basically nothing happens in Flutter because without a column, without a row, without a container. So if you guys don't have questions, I assume explain the restart and reload again. Okay, cool, cool. So basically, uh, there are two buttons in Flutter to check or update your app as soon as you're coding. So it's very fast way. There's a hot reload button and there's a hot restart button. Whenever I'm doing Control S or Command S in my code, that is basically reloading the app. It is not completely restarting the app. So the reload button will just call this particular widget again. I was inside my scaffold, and that reload will just load this widget again. But what the restart button will, on the other hand, do is it will restart your complete app. So it will load the app again from this main function, which goes to my app. This my app will load the material app widget, which will then load the home page, and then home page state. So suppose I increment my count to 10, and if I do restart now, hot restart, it will load the app again. And when we load the app again, what was our statement over here? Count is 0, right? So it should display 0. So if I restart it, the counter goes back to 0. If you can see over here, the counter went back to 0. But when it's 5 and I reload it, it'll stay to 5 because it didn't execute the statement. It was just inside my this scaffold. So it just updated that contents. Suppose this red, I made it colors dot blue. And if I do hot reload, it will change the color to blue because it is still inside my scaffold widget, the current widget basically. This is how reload works, and hot reset would have restarted the whole app. I hope it's clear now. Any more questions? What does set state do? Okay. So a stateful widget has a state, right? So the set state function, whenever you call it, the it will know when to update its contents, right? So this set state over here, only this part of the code will update its contents continuously. Whenever I click on this button, it will go to the on pressed parameter of the floating action button and it'll call the set state function. And that set state will basically update the state. So how does it update the state? Basically, we are incrementing the count, right? So it'll update that count value inside this widget. So if it was 4, I write count plus plus and I write set state. So this count value has now become 5. So inside this text widget, the 5 value count as 5 is passed. I hope it's clear, Yash. So we can move ahead now. Cool then. Let's go to the next part. Set state will update only the contents that are inside the set state function. Like if I write this count plus plus, remove it from here, and I put it outside the set state. And now if I update my button, I should restart. So the set state, what it does is basically updates the count button, like whatever is inside it, right? So, cool. Then I assume we can go to the next topic. What we're doing now is basically what's container, what's a column, what's a row widget. Those are the three very important widgets in Flutter. You can't make an app without them essentially in Flutter. So let's remove all of this code. We don't need all of this now. And let's make this back to a stateless widget. Okay, I'll just write it up. Class homepage extends stateless widget. Again, what do we need to do? We need to hover on it, create a missing override, remove this unwanted code, and return scaffold. So I save it, you'll just get a white screen because scaffold does not generate any other widget. Now let's do one thing, let's study what a container is. So inside the body property of scaffold, I'll write a container. Container is, just assume it as a box which has infinite width and infinite height. If it does not have any child inside it, it has a child property. So if this container does not have any child inside it, and if, for example, it will basically take infinite width and infinite height, right? So if I had given this background color to scaffold as, let's say, um, colors dot, let's say I've given it black. Now if I refresh this, it should give me black. But inside the container, if I write the color property as colors dot white, and if I refresh, it's white. Why? We have given the scaffold as a background color as black, so it should be black, right? No. What this does is, scaffold's body property has a container which is of white color, and that container has infinite height and infinite width. It will be more clear when I'll give it some height. So you'll see if I give it 100 height, and let's say if I give it 100 width, you can see that small container over there. Background color remains black, and this container's color is white. And there's a small property. So if you can see over here, this container is getting hidden by the uh, status bar or the notification bar, whatever that is. So if you want that not to happen, then you can just click on this, again hover it, and wrap with widget. I'll tell you how to get that wrap with widget. So just click on this container with your cursor. You'll find this yellow bulb, just like you see the red bulb in a override function, override method. So wrap with widget, and there's a widget called as safe area, which will keep your contents out of the notches of the iPhones or the notification bars of the Android phones. So it's not in the notification bar now. Let's change it to a better color so you can see. Let's make our container red, and yeah, so that's our container right there. And now there are two things in Flutter called one is a margin and one is a padding. What is a margin? Basically, if I let's say again go to the yellow, and I I'll do padding first. So it takes a child property. What I'll do in the child property, I'll give it a text. Let's say um, container. Now it's not visible, so make this white, and I'll make this light blue. I think it's visible now. So container has a padding property. If I give a padding to it, what does padding do? Padding moves the child of the container away from the container. Suppose I write edge insets dot all, and I write 10. What this will do is it will move the contents of the container away from the container's border. So if you can see clearly, the container text, it came down from all four sides by 10. This is basically what padding is. Margin, on the other hand, is the other thing. So it basically separates the container from other widgets in our app. Padding will separate the child of the container from the container. Margin will separate the container from other containers or other columns or other rows, whatever. So there are many types of padding that you can. Suppose I want to just give left side padding. So what I'll do, I'll just write edge insets dot only, and I'll write a left over here. We'll give it left padding. So it moved back to top 0 because we have just given it some left padding. If I give it just the top padding, let's say of 50, it will come down by 50 pixels. So this is what padding is. And let's say I want to tell you what margin is. So it's basically the same thing as padding. It's just it is different in how it's implemented. So same edge insets dot all. If I write let's say 10, you'll see the container move. And why did the container move? So margin separates the container from other contents of the app, and padding separates the child of the container from the container. Let's give it all, and let's give it 10. Now you can clearly see the padding over here is just moving the container text, that is the child of the container, away from the container. But margin is moving the container itself away from other contents of our app. This is essentially what a container is. a very important tool in Flutter. If some of you are doing web dev, then it is very similar to the div that you use in web development. Basically, a box or anything that you can put inside that. So this is a container. Now let's say I want to have multiple containers, right? So I'll just remove all of margin and padding. And let's say we want to have multiple containers. What do we do? Currently, this container can just have one child property, right? But what if I use a column widget? That column widget can take multiple containers inside it. I'll show you how to do it. You go to this yellow bulb, uh, and there's a wrap with column over here. So I wrap my container with a column. So I have a column created now. And what does that column have? It has a container simply just now. If I copy this container, now I have two containers. So if I save, you can see two containers. I'll just change the color of both of them. So it's visible. Yeah. Now you can see both are containers. And this is essentially a column. I can add another container if I want. Let's make it yellow. There's a third container. Now column is basically vertical and row is basically horizontal. If instead of column I would have written here, let's say row, then what would have happened? We have got a horizontal row because row is horizontal, column is vertical. Let's stick to column right now. So column has various properties like main axis. There's something called as main axis alignment. This is very important. So by default, the main axis alignment parameter is start. If I click save, nothing happens. Start means on that vertical axis where the column is, the contents are aligned to the start of the column. If instead of the start, I write end, what happens? It will go down because that's the end of the column. If let's say there are many properties like you can see, you have space evenly, you have end. If I have center, I save it, it will go to the center. If I go to let's say space between, it does this. If I go to space evenly, it will do. So these are basically ways to play around yourself, but this is a very important property of a column. And there's so let's make it start for now. So column's main axis is vertical and column's cross axis is horizontal. So if I write cross axis alignment and I write cross axis alignment dot stretch, what do you think this will do? Cross axis is horizontal. So what this does is stretches the column to the whole possible width of the phone. If I click save, it it went to the start because we had main axis dot start. But cross axis alignment stretched our contents from one end to the other end. That's what cross axis does, because columns cross axis will be a horizontal thing. If instead of this column I write row over here, please move the contents vertical. This is what it does. So inside a row I have a container which is saying that main axis is start. But cross axis, that is for row, the cross axis will be vertical. So that vertical axis is now stretched towards the end. So this is about row. And there's one more thing that I would like to share. Let's move this, save. Let's say I want to give some spaces between these containers. What do I do? If I know it's a fixed space like 10 pixels or 20 pixels, there's something called as a sized box. So I'll write height is equal to 10. Let's. So you can see there's a gap formed between the red container and the blue container. Instead of this height, if I give this size box a width, the gap went. Why? Imagine it's a column. The axis of the column is vertical. So we are inserting contents vertically. So the first container, then the second container, then the third container. If you put a size box in between those two containers with a height 0, then obviously it will not be visible because column is vertical. But if I make this column a row and I save it, you'll see there's a gap between the red and the blue box. Because in row, the main axis is horizontal. So the width of the size box will be used. But if I change this width to a height, then again the gap will go because it's a row. Row's main axis is horizontal. And then the same thing you can do with row, like main axis element dot start, or you can go to end, or you can space evenly. All of the same stuff that we did for column comes for row too. So this is a size box, container, row, column, safe area widget. We saw padding, we saw margin, and that's about it. If you guys have any questions, then you can let me know. Any questions, guys? Shushvit, what is your question? Can you elaborate? So, if you don't remember what you have written, there, uh, I mean, you can go to Flutter Inspector. Okay, wait, no. And then you can see a widget tree over here. So, Flutter Inspector is basically on the right hand side of the toolbar. You'll have your, we have our My App widget, and inside My App we called a Material App widget. Inside that we called a Homepage class. Inside that we called a Scaffold. Inside row, and then container, and then whatever we did. And if you want to remember some properties, like you don't actually need to remember anything. Like suppose I hover on scaffold, I can see all of this stuff over here. Like it has a floating action button, it has an app bar, it has a body, it has a bottom navigation bar, it has a bottom sheet, it has a background color property. So, and you can just check Flutter docs; they are updated every now and then. So, also if you see, it's very interactive, right? So if I write main axis dot, I'll see all the options that I have over here: space evenly, center, end, space around, space between, start. So you can use them and try which one do you need, which one suits your needs. And so you don't need to remember anything. It's you just need to remember the concepts of a row, a container, and a column that I've just told you all right now. That is very important for Flutter. Ah, cool then. Um, so in the next session, we'll be making a tic-tac-toe app, right? So for that, what we require is we should know how to basically click on a button, right? Like in a tic-tac-toe app, you'll have a play button, you'll have a grid box. So if I click on the leftmost grid box, it will turn from blank to X if I'm a player X, or a circle if I'm a player O. So how do we do that? So there's a very simple thing in Flutter. So the container widget I will wrap with widget, and the widget that we are going to use now is called as a gesture detector widget. Now again, you can hover over here. You can see all of these features that you have. So basically, any app that you use, like on tap, on secondary tap, on double tap, on long press. So all of these functions are already over here with you. What I need to do, if I tap on a container, so I'll just write on tap, and over here I'll write print click. I'll put a semicolon, and if I refresh and if I click on my red button, you will see this clicked outputted over here. That means it has detected a gesture on this red container. So this is how a gesture detector works, which we will use in our tic-tac-toe app in the next session. This session is more of a basic outline of Flutter, all the basic widgets that you need. Now, let's say if you want to change this color of the container from red to blue when I click on it. Again, we'll have to make it a stateful widget. So bear with me, this is the last thing. I know you all are getting bored. So again, we'll make our class homepage as a stateful widget. Why do we need to make a stateful widget? Because we want our container to update when I click on it, right? The color should change. So I will go over here. Again, same story. Creating an override, removing this code, changing this to homepage, returning a function called as homepage state, and creating it over here. And obviously, we have to write state and insert this homepage. Now it's giving me an error. Have I missed something? Okay, spelling is wrong. Yeah. So we have created a stateful widget. And now if you want to change this color from red to blue, we should know when we clicked on it, right? So let's define a variable bool click is equal to false. And it's a very simple technique that I'm going to do. I'm just going to change this value from false to true. So when it's true, the color will be blue, and when it's false, the color will be red. And how do? We do that by using a ternary operator. Ternary operator is basically a very short form of if else. So instead of hard coding this color as colors.red, what I'll do is I'll see if click is true, then I want colors dot red. If it's not true, then I want colors dot blue. So if I refresh, it should turn to blue. Why? Because we have given our click value as false. If I make this as true, it so identity change. Yeah, because obviously we have to hot restart the app. Otherwise, it won't check this statement only. Because we were inside the scaffold, right? So it didn't reload the app again. So now what do we need to do? When we click on it, we don't want this click to be print. We want to change the bool value of our click. So inside this on tab, instead of writing print click, I'll just write not Not means opposite of what the click variable is right now. Very simple C programming. Now if I click on it, it still doesn't change. Why? Because we haven't used the set state function. So I will write my set state, move these two from here to here. I'll save it. And if I click on it, well, let's go restart it. If I click on it, it should change to blue. It didn't change. Let's see why. So it's just giving me true every time. It is not changing my click value. Why is this happening? Oh, I need to write click equal to not click. Silly mistake. So obviously we have to put the new value of click inside the click variable back, right? So now let's restart it. And I click on container, it turned to blue. I click again, it turned to red. Blue, red, blue, red. So this is the gesture detector function and the set state in more detail, basically how you use a stateful widget. We will use this gesture detector a lot in the tic-tac-toe app. So I think we are done. If you guys have any questions, then do let me know. Any questions or should we wrap up? Cool then. Thank you all for joining in. And if you have any questions, do let me know. And we'll be having sessions 2 and sessions 3 of this Flutter Festival, wherein we'll start with the tic-tac-toe app. This was more of just basic Flutter, column, row, scaffold, and all the different widgets that you have. So if you guys have any questions, let's stay. Otherwise, we are done. Well, then I assume there are no questions. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.